Hello, everyone. Welcome to Engaging with Nature, the semiotic and gender dimensions of creation myths. In this lecture, I will speak about engaging with nature by referring to creation myths and clay. Clay often appears as a primordial material, the material of the origins. Thus, talking about clay implies crossing to the realm of myth. I will argue that myths propose semiotic constructions that no longer refer to the immediate field of material reality, and where abstraction is executed under the logic of analogy. However, my lecture will turn to the manipulative aspects of creation, to the potter's craft, and to the biomagical properties of clay. My study begins with a revision of the role of clay in creation myths. In particular, I highlight the action of female and cross-gender divinities. The comparative perspective of the study seeks to unveil how early myths of creation envision ways of representing nature as permaculture, that is, the philosophy of working with nature rather than merely using it. My argument is that creation myths enact a kind of alternative organic creationist narrative through which the dominant narrative of nature exploitation can be subverted. Matter in general, and clay in particular, emerge not as forms to be shaped by us humans, but as active agents in our becoming. The ongoing configurations of science and meaning within the semiotics of myths allow alternative rewritings of stories and of histories, where matter and the non-human are protagonists crucially intertwined with the human. Since antiquity, one of the most important aspects in human life, which has acquired mythical dimensions, has been our relationship with nature. Until the Renaissance, with the shift towards its anthropocentric worldview, nature was seen as a living force, encompassing both animate and inanimate entities and inspired by the divinity. The natural world was perceived and experienced as essentially alive, an organism made up of other organisms. There was also an understanding of a sort of a spiritual force that permeated earth worship, an idea present in the first natural religions, often in connection with cosmogonies and with fertility rites that also included female, cross-gender, and hybrid deities as artificers of creation. Nature was considered divine, sacred, and magic, as attested by Giambattista della Porta in his Magia Naturalis. Many cosmogonies and creation myths are based on analogies that refer to the birth inspired by natural catastrophes that create chaos out of which order soon ensues. In ancient beliefs, the earth seemed to sustain all creatures, plants, animals, and humans, as in a living womb. Neolithic rituals contemplated harvesting as a sacred fertility union. The soil was female and the seeds were male. According to David Lemming, a leading authority on the comparative literature of mythology, the reproductive cycle of animals and plants may have inspired some of these beliefs. The binary male-female seem to offer an easy way to express other kinds of opposite pairings in nature. It is also present in alchemical texts concerning the craft of chemical transmutation, both physical, the transformation of metals, minerals, and plants, and metaphysical, the transition into a state of spiritual perfection. However, nature was often seen as a hybrid entity, sometimes a human hermaphrodite, but also human, non-human organism. The materials of creation can be of various types, usually pieces of clay or other forms of earth, a primary mound, or less frequently, a cosmic egg, explains Lemin. Nature has mostly been personified as female entity, and many feminist interpreters of Neolithic history have concluded that the ancient societies were basically matriarchal before the onset of patriarchy, according to Lerner, for example. In many cultures, the maternal, nurturing earth was assimilated to the mother goddess. Just to give some examples, Asherah was identified as the consort of the Sumerian god Anu, who appears in the Baal cycle, a number of stories about the Canaanite god Baal, the storm god. In Mesopotamia, she was called Inanna, in Egypt, Isis, and in Greece, she was Hera, Demeter, and Aphrodite. Fusing with the great mother of the Paleolithic hunting societies, these goddesses retain violent as well as nurturing characteristics. The Egyptian warrior goddess Anat, or Demeter, the Olympian goddess of agriculture and fertility, but also of life cycles, and Parvati, also known as Durga, wife of the Hindu god Shiva, and reincarnation of Sati. And all of these goddesses are goddesses of fertility, love, beauty, but also in some ferocious manifestations. For example, Parvati appears as Kali with 8 or 10 arms, wearing a garland of severed heads and a skirt of disembodied hands. These dual aspects of ancient goddesses symbolize the constant and desperate struggle for life against droughts, famine, disease, and other violent forces of nature, and also bring awareness of the effects of earth degradation and destruction as a kind of symbolism connected with contemporary eco-feminist approaches. A similar story appears in the Babylonian creation myth, Enuma Elish, recorded in Akkadian on 7 clay tablets. Here, creation is an evolutionary process in which the first deities emerge from a sacred primal matter, a sloppy, undefined, chaotic substance without any identities. The first deities then emerge corresponding to natural elements: Apsu, the sweet river water; Tiamat, the salty sea water; and Mumu, a misty cloud. Their names can also be translated as abyss, void, and bottomless pit. Other gods emanate from them, and slowly an order cosmos comes into being, where these original divine elements separate from each other. Among the first elements comes clay, water and soil mixed together, represented by Lamu and Hamu. In tablet 6, Ea, the god of water and earth, speaks to his son Marduk about creating humans from clay as servants for the gods. Early attempts to create humans had failed, and because they didn't have enough intelligence to serve the gods. So Ea advises Marduk to use blood from one of the gods and mix it with the clay. And later Marduk founds the city of Babylon, where the humans are going to live in close connection to the gods, because the Babylon literally means the gate to the gods. And the ziggurat takes the place of the mountain, or axis mundi, that connects the human and the divine worlds. A similar story appears in the Akkadian epic Atrahasis, which is named after the its protagonist. And here the creator is a mother goddess, known as variously as Araru, or sister of Enlil or Enki, also sometimes as Nima, as Mama or Mami, mother, and also as Ninhursag. And the description of creation here, it's as follows. The goddess took 14 pieces of primordial clay to form 7 pairs of human embryos. Again, these first creations by the goddess were not successful, and her consort Enki, the Anunnaki god of water and earth, later known as Ea, urges her to mix the blood of one of the gods with clay to create human servants for the gods. And the first man is named Enkidu. According to the description by a scholar Wallis Budge, the goddess, and I quote, washed her hands, took some clay, spat upon it, and made a man who was covered with hair. He lived in the forest with the beasts. Enkidu was then sent to fight and kill semi-god and hero Gilgamesh, who finally decided to tame him. In Egyptian mythology, during the Third Dynasty and the Old Kingdom, the male fertility god Num, associated with the annual flooding of the river Nile, fashions humans from clay upon his potter wheel. Num shares this task with goddess Hathor, who imparts the breath of life into the clay figures by pointing the hand at their nostrils. Hathor was Ra's feminine counterpart and the symbolic mother of the earthly representatives of the gods, the pharaohs. She was often depicted as a cow, a symbol of motherhood and nourishment, and sometimes the goddess appeared as a woman wearing a headdress of cow horns and a sun disk. During the New Kingdom, goddesses like Isis took over Hathor's position, and we must remember that Isis also revived her brother Osiris by fanning clay with her wings. In the 8th century before Common Era, we have similar descriptions in the Greek epic poem by Hesiod, where he mentions Prometheus for the first time. The story of the Titan of fire and champion of humanity is later expanded in Hesiod's works and days. And here Theus commands Hephaestus to create a woman out of clay to bring mischief and sorrow, plague and diseases to the humans that Prometheus, in some versions of the myth, had created from clay. Hesiod is one of the first authors to refer to women as sources of danger for their male counterparts. In the Theogony, he writes, and I quote, "From her is the race of women and female kind. Of her is the deadly race and tribe of women who live amongst mortal men to their great trouble. No help meets in hateful poverty, but only in wealth." In Works and Days, he names this first woman Pandora, meaning the bringer of all gifts. And in the Metamorphoses, Ovid, the Roman poet, describes how the son of Iapetus, Prometheus, mixed clay with rainwater in the image of the gods who rule everything. And this land that had been rough and shapeless until then transformed and dressed in unknown figures of men. And you have the quotation from the Perseus projects. Similarly, in the Protagoras, Plato describes Prometheus as the plasticator or a sculptor. And additionally, in his Symposium, Aristophanes' speech mentions that the first humans were hermaphrodite figures that Zeus later separated. And you can actually see the quotation on your screen. In the Judeo Christian tradition, we also have similar descriptions. God proceeded to form man from the dust of the earth and to blow the breath of life into his nostrils, says the Genesis chapter 2:7. A similar statement is professed in Jeremiah 18:2-10, and also by the prophet Isaiah, who chants, "O Jehovah, you are our Father, we are the clay and you are our potter, and we are all the work of your hand." And you have the quotations on your screen. Ronald Murphy indicates that in his commentary on Genesis, St. Augustine insisted that the translation for the original substance should be clay and not earth or dust. Murphy also points out how Latin translations of the Bible use the terms animare and to put in motions, describing the moment when God breathes anima or soul into the clay human. In Talmudic literature, Kabbalah, and Jewish folklore, the golem is an animated and anthropomorphic figure. And sorry, just trying to find the slide. That results from clay. And researcher Moshe Edel traces the ancient roots of the golem to the influences from other cultures upon Judaic tradition. According to Edel, the Sefer Yezirat, whose dating remains uncertain and is located approximately between the 3rd and the 6th centuries Common Era, describes the creation of the world from infinite combinations of letters that would constitute both the technique and the material for creation. And the golem carries the word emet, which means truth in Hebrew, on its forehead. And this word could be deactivated and turned back into an inert mass by erasing the first letter of the word and making it met, which means death. So the golem, it's almost like a cyborg robot. No? According to Edel, the golem can never be human because it's not the work of the gods, but a kind of copy, an artificial being created by semi-gods. The myth of the golem has similarities with the story of Prometheus and Daulos as his assistant, as recorded in Aesop fables. And you can read this particular fable on your screen if you stop this video for a few minutes. In Islamic Quran, Adam is the first man created by Allah from clay. Your Lord said to the angels, I'm going to create a human being out of clay. When I have formed him, I breathed my spirit into him, fall down in prostration to him. Allah uses different clay colors to create all skin tones on earth, according to Lehman. One of the hadiths, the narratives that refer to the sayings and actions of the Prophet Muhammad, adds that Adam was named from the clay with which it was created. And in fact, in Hebrew, Adam means man, and as well as clay and earth. Clay creation myths distinguish the different races by the colors of clay, ranging from white, yellow, and brown. They appear in the modeling of humans in African regions such as Congo, Madagascar, the Swahili in Kenya and Tanzania, the Yoruba culture in Nigeria, the Mali in West Africa, where the first clay human form was a woman in the sitting position that you can see on your screen and which is preserved at the Met in New York. In the kingdom of Dahomey that existed until 1898 and is now known as the country of Benin, The Mao Lisa is a dual-sex creator god, which combines the female moon, Mao, and the male sun, Lisa. And the god's female half, Mao, populated the earth and sent her male half, Lisa, down to earth to teach people how to live. And the myth explains that Mao worked water and clay, from which she molded more creatures. In China, we have in the book known as the Huannanqi, a collection of essays that was put forth during the Warring Kingdom period. This collection tells the story of a goddess, Nu Wa, who created humans by modeling yellow clay after male god Fuxi fell asleep exhausted from working on creation and without creating humanity. So Nu Wa was pleased with her creation, especially when the human began to run around and dance, and she made more and more of the little figures, both male and female. The goddess is often portrayed as a hybrid figure with the body of a serpent and the head of a young woman, and also often with double heads alongside her male partner, Fuxi, symbolizing the dual elements of the yin-yang. The figures also hold the tools of creation, the compass and the square, in a similar way to the rebis that we have seen in a previous slide. The Potus Wheel was invented in Mesopotamia between 6,000 and 4,000 before Common Era. As in Egypt, the symbol is commonly found in the ancient Vedantic literature of India. The cosmos itself is compared to the symbol of the Potter's Wheel. It contains within itself the vibrating divine life, which is shaped into different forms and sizes. The divine wheel, or Vishaka, is a sort of guiding impulse. The central axis around which the Potter's Wheel rotates, it's almost stationary, without apparent movement at the center. Clay is then placed there, and the shape, visualized by means of imagination in the potter's mind, is gradually imprinted on the clay by the wheel, which works according to the potter's fingers. As mentioned, many cultures speak of the first attempts to make the gods and to model humans out of clay, and failing to do this. Examples appear in some versions of Mongolian creation myths, in pre-Columbian America, in the cosmogony of the Arapaho tribe, east of the Great Plains, in the current states of Colorado and Wyoming, also in the Iroquois and Algonquian myths, where we have two twins which are born from a sky woman, Flint and Skyholder, who represent the polarization between the trickster god and the creation god. Skyholder saw his own reflection in a pool of water, and taking some clay, he made 6 pairs of humans in his own image. The first man and woman of these 6 nations of Iroquois were wiped out because Flint brought disease and evil into them. Another character is a spider woman, who was central in the mythologies of the people in the American Southwest. The Hopi, for example, believed that she made the humans out of clay, modeling the thoughts of god Tawa. Tawa said, "It's not good that they lie thus still and quiet. Each thing that has a form must also have a spirit. So now, my beloved, we must make a mighty magic." So the two of them together laid a white woolen blanket over the many figures and made an incantation, making the figures come to life. According to the Incas, who inhabited present-day Peru, Ecuador, and northern Chile, After emerging from Lake Titicaca, the sun god Viracocha created humans from clay and stone, and he infused them with his vital breath. A similar formula appears in the Quiche Mayan culture of Guatemala. The Popol Vuh speaks of 4 attempts to achieve the successful version of humans. The sea creator, Gukumats, and the sky creator god, Heart of Sky, made humans out of clay, and they could not speak. So the creators consulted the goddess Mukane and the god Spijako. They were 2 beings who were older than the gods, and upon their advice, they created a new race of humans, this time successfully. In the southern hemisphere, the Maori people of New Zealand believed that Tene Mahuta, the god of the forest, created the first woman out of clay and breathed life into her. And Sir James Fraser documents these and many more examples all over the world. Creation is usually understood as bringing something into existence by modeling the modeling of a primitive and amorphous matter, usually clay or earth, but also chaotic waters. Charles Long classified creation myths into 5 groups: creation ex nihilo, creation from chaos, creation from dismemberment or blood of a primordial being or god, creation from primeval waters, and emergent forms of creation. In all the cases, one of the dominant themes is the creation from some sort of chaotic disorder, exemplified by some amorphous and differentiated matter like water, clay, mud, or earth. Artist Suzanne Staubach says that clay, more than any other medium, inspires manipulation, touch. It offers infinite possibilities for shape. Barbara Walkers also says that clay has always been a sacred feminine material, one of the primary earth substances. And indeed, the oldest known pottery figure is the Venus of Dolní Věstonice, found in the Paleolithic site in the Czech Republic, and which dates from between 29,000 to 25,000 before Common Era. This is at the height of the Ice Age, long before the first settlements and the development of agriculture. To use a literary example, this poem by Romantic poet and artist William Blake, The Cloth and the Pebble, it's included in Sons of Experience. And Blake narrates a debate about love between 2 material forms. In a river brook, a clear symbol of life and change, a personified little clod of clay sings that love is selfless and capable of creating a heaven in hell despair. The clod of clay is described as trodden, associated the material with innocence and self-sacrifice. In contrast, a pebble warbles in a broken voice that love is selfish and builds a hell in heavens. The pebble has been hardened by erosion in the brook, but it still hears the clod sing. Each of the material forms is associated with feminine and masculine values, and the allegory allows Blake to question absolute oppositions and emphasize their complementarity, as well as that of heaven and hell, and connoting the incompleteness and transformative power of creation. And clay also appears in the first draft of Blake's well-known poem, The Tiger. Much research is being devoted to explore the development of ancient medicine towards modern pharmacology. In ancient societies, the use of herbs, clays, and other material substances for medical tasks were under women's hands, who were also performing much of the agricultural work. At some point in history, however, women's engagement in this task became separated from the doings of the so-called witches. According to Rosemary Guiley, healing became a clear sign of heresy and witchcraft, as it appears in the Malus Maleficarum or Hammer of Witches. Gender politics behind the disappearance of women in science still needs much exploration, also with regards to the study of alchemy as a proto-science. Alchemy was wide-ranging in its scope, encompassing a variety of ideas and practices that today are treated as separate disciplines. However, one important characteristic in alchemy was a belief in animism that seems to be re-emerging in contemporary times, as we shall see later. Although not in all myths, in some of them, the animation process is not satisfied only by the modeling in clay, but also requires the intermediation of a breath of life. Thus, the idea of clay as a container appears in analogy to the idea of the body as a container. This implies the notion of an edge, border, or separation between exterior and interior that may have served to culturally enforce the cognitive metaphor of the body as a container. This view of human nature contemplates a total separation between body and mind. It appeared first in Aristotle's theory of hylomorphism, where the Greek philosopher defined the soul as that which makes a living thing alive. However, it became more prominent in Cartesian thought. With mind and body separated, and with the human mind considered a superior entity, the scientific method sought to break down the organic whole of nature into its parts, dissecting and analyzing them in order to dominate and exploit them in the name of progress. Whereas alchemy and organic thinking contemplated nature, human, non-human, as interdependent, at least in Europe, the fathers of the scientific revolutions were determined to dominate nature. Natural philosophy struggled to re-enchant the natural world at various points in time, being often dismissed as a pseudoscience. The Irish classical scholar Eric Robertson Dodds writes that the ancient world associated metamorphosis and shifts in shape with the irrational and with magic, often related to sacred words and spells. But what is magic but an intuition that what is not yet perhaps could be? And where is this sense of possibility grounded? Like metaphor, imagination is a leap that occurs by establishing similarities between unlikely conceptual domains. As Jane Bennett puts in her book Vibrant Matter, in revealing similarities across categorical divides and lightening up parallels between material forms in nature and those in culture, anthropomorphism can reveal isomorphism. Bennett writes that by vitality, she means the capacity of things, edibles, commodities, storms, metals, not only to impede or block the will and designs of humans, but also to act as quasi-agents or forces with trajectories, propensities, or tendencies of their own. She adds that she attempts to articulate a vibrant materiality that runs alongside and inside humans to see how analysis of political events might change if we gave the force of things more due. In Bennett's conception, the conceptual metaphor of the body as container is shattered. Or perhaps it's not, because clay is the most porous sediment and also the least permeable, and helps retain the most basic ingredient of life, water. Thus, biological entities, including humans and clay, are intimate in their materiality and akin in their vitality. In creation out of clay, an inanimate material is almost invested with human qualities in a sort of non-anthropomorphic magical turn, a simultaneous coexistence of imaginative and material universes. Is there a possibility of having an inert principle which has the potential for active and transformative self-organization, and where the border between the living and the inert, the animate and the dead, becomes blurred? Along these lines, creation myths may be analyzed as material transformations where matter undergoes not just a change of form, but also a change of inanimate to animate matter. As a comparatist, I like to foreground the kind of agencies and contiguities that Jane Bennett talks about, moving across categorical divides and lighting up intuitive parallels. Often, in trying to articulate these encounters, a sort of tacit or implicit knowledge that is difficult to express emerges. Isomorphic metaphors across domains of experience appear as a form of personal insight that cannot be externally proven, almost like magic. The ancient Greeks embedded this state of wonder in what they term poiesis, that is, the activity in which a person brings something into being that did not exist before. In the Symposium, Plato says, whatever passes from not being into being is poiesis, that is, a cause for wonder. So allow me to turn towards science. In the last part of my lecture, a couple of slides left, I turn to inquire into in what sense can clay be considered a living thing. In the 1970s, Leslie Orgel led a pioneer research on the origin of life, and he claimed that clay minerals had been fundamental in conducting biochemical reactions as they act as cell membranes that wrap, protect, and participate in the production of life. More recently, it has been found that clay facilitates the polymerization of ribonucleic acid from activated ribonucleases, accelerating an spontaneous conversion of fatty acid micelles into vesicles. Clay particles are encapsulated in these vesicles and provide a pathway for prebiotic encapsulation. And this turns out to be a highly attractive environment for RNA subunits to concentrate and join together into long chains, creating the potential for self-replication and causing a 100% fold acceleration of vesicle formation, according to 2009 Nobel Prize winner and professor at Harvard Medical School, Jack Shostak. So without time for further reflection, let me conclude. Clay has always been linked to processes of transformation like life cycles. In ancient cultures, the properties of clay were related to fertility rites in relation to cultivated fields. Clay is also one of the oldest building materials on Earth, used to create adobe, plaster, ceramics, and other building elements. Traditional uses of clay as medicine go back to prehistoric times, and it is still in use in cosmetics. Additionally, clay tablets were among the first known writing media. This lecture has used creation myths as a substrate to rewrite the story of clay, not as a passive material dominated by an anthropocentric subject who imposes a form, which also reveals the power of the metaphor of the homo faber semiotic capacity for manufacturing symbols. Material engagement is here not only understood as the neural correlation of the visual and touch perception, which allows the mind to think in terms of grasping concepts or having 3D experiences of at one's fingertips, where the hand is viewed as the window onto the mind, as Kant claimed. Indeed, clay is the most philosophical of materials, claims Richard Sennett in his groundbreaking volume, The Craftsman. It forces thinking about manipulation, change, and transformation of matter, but also holds many secrets in the magic void inside of the container. No wonder clay is the stuff of creation myths, pertaining to a shared interiority between humans and non-humans, as Lambros Malaforis has put it, of lively material encounters across porous boundaries of bodies, ecosystems, places, and scales of being. Thank you very much for your attention.